Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back to the second hour of News and Views right here on Salam Media. It is exactly 10 after 9 o'clock, and we're now going to be taking a listen and viewing a very interesting clip which was recorded by my colleague, and that, of course, is Salailo Makodiri. And the big question here is, are extortionists targeting social workers in Cape Town? MEC for Social Development in the Western Cape, Jaco Londt, provides insight. So let's take a look and listen to that very important interview.
Welcome back. You're still tuned in to Salam Media, your home of humanitarian journalism. And we'll be delving into quite concerning issue. I think this issue has become a nuisance, literally, across the country. But I think the focus now is in Cape Town. The issue of extortion. In recent months, social workers in Cape Town have found themselves in the crosshairs of criminal syndicates, facing escalating threats of extortion, assault, and even hijacking. Once regarded as safe in communities they serve, these essential workers are now being targeted for protection fees by criminals, impacting their ability to provide critical services. Reports from the Western Cape Department of Social Development reveal that social workers have become increasingly traumatized and unable to cope with these threats, leading to disruptions in service delivery. Despite calls for harsher penalties and greater protection, the issue remains unresolved, putting both social workers and vulnerable communities at risk. And joining us in a bit to discuss this rising threat and potential solutions is Jaco Londt, the Western Cape MMC of Social Development, joining us virtually. MMC, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Appreciate you giving us your time.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me and being able to adjust your schedule as well to fit into mine as well.
No, pleasure's all ours. I think first and foremost, our point of departure can be maybe you just giving us a sense of the scale of this issue. How big and how broad is it, particularly in some of the identified hotspots like Delft and Khayelitsha?
So specifically when we talk about the extortion fees, that is a new phenomenon that's now stuck out its head. Since April 2019, we've had 41 incidences where Western Cape Department of Social Development staff has either been victims of robbery, assault, threats, hijacking, or attempted hijackings, and that took place in areas such as Khayelitsha, Easter River, Wynberg, Elsies River, Crossroads, Philippi, Guguletu, Delft, Mfuleni, Mitchell's Plain, Paarl, and Langa. But now the extortion money that's been requested from our social workers, that happened last month now for the first time. We've had two cases. One just before the social worker went out, and the second one, unfortunately, due to these hotspots, we need to have this buddy system where social workers have to go out two at a time. So the one social worker got out of the car and went into the community to try and find the client. And as the other social worker were trying to park, he was approached and said, listen, you need to pay money to safely park here. So that's a new phenomenon. I've already flagged that with the MEC for police oversight and community safety in the Western Cape. She has already taken that up with General Patekile, the provincial commissioner in the province. And it's now incumbent upon all of us to take hands across government, but also in our communities. If you see any of these criminal elements sticking out their heads, if it's safe to do so, please step up, report it, so that we can address this before it becomes a much bigger problem.
What are some of the key things that you have identified when it comes to maybe the modus operandi of these syndicates, and at what level has this affected the ability of social workers to deliver essential services to vulnerable communities, essentially, who need their presence more than many?
So, there's been regular engagements with staff in hotspot areas, such as Khayelitsha, Guguletu, Nyanga, and where social workers are unable to safely enter a hotspot area, they have been instructed not to do so and wait until you get a police escort. SAPS is available to go with them into the area. Especially after hours, it becomes a massive risk. And we also then try and find alternative ways to look after our clients should something happen in one of these hotspot areas. If a social worker is also a victim of any of this, we make sure that they get the necessary psychosocial support. Now, social workers are identified. It's not just social workers. There's also ambulance drivers, other healthcare professionals that gets targeted because they use the government branded vehicles. So we've started a process to get them unbranded vehicles so that it makes them less identifiable when they move into the communities. On the one hand, we are also trying to make it a lot easier for our social workers to do their work, lessening the administrative burden on them by rolling out the SWIMS app, the Social Worker Integrated Management System. The flip side of that is, in order to digitize everything, every social worker will now be getting a smartphone. So that also makes them another target. So it's this counterbalance that we try and get right all the time. We're now even looking at getting panic buttons for our social workers and how that will work. So it's definitely not the ideal scenario and the situation. Criminal elements are finding new ways of targeting our professionals, and then we need to find new ways of looking after our professionals. But the one thing that's incredibly encouraging is the memorandum of understanding that was signed between Minister Mkunu, National Minister for Police, the Western Cape, under the leadership of Premier Alan Winde and Minister Murray, and also the City of Cape Town, where we will now be deploying resources, or they'll be deploying resources based on the data. So if there's a hotspot area, we should be able to deploy more police resources in those areas. And hopefully that will now also have a positive effect in making it safer. And that is across government, from a national to a local level, that we're taking hands, but also across different departments. We're also trying to take hands to address this problem.
Your department, the Department of Social Development, has been calling for the Justice Ministry to impose harsher penalties for attacks on social workers and other workers of the municipality. What steps are being taken in the provincial level to ensure that this becomes a priority? Have you had conversations yourself with the ministry? What's the latest on that?
So I must give credit here to the standing committee, the committee that has oversight over the work of this department. Across party political lines, they took hands and they said, this is not acceptable. And they wrote to the National Minister of Justice. They've not received feedback. They've sent follow-up letters and will continue to do so. So that's a very encouraging step, that this affects absolutely everybody in this province, and all representatives in the standing committee. They've taken hands to ensure that we take this matter up. We also have colleagues that take this up in the National Assembly, in the National Council of Provinces, flag it in that portfolio committee or in that select committee. And we will continue to put pressure through various channels so that if there can be an example made of people that target our professionals, that target our staff, that look after the most vulnerable, then hopefully that will make it less rewarding for criminals, and they can see there's consequences for their actions. So again, similar to the previous one, we're trying to take hands here, not just across departments and government, but we're also here taking hands across party political lines and say this needs to stop and we need to address this, and we need the assistance from our National Minister of Justice to also say this is unacceptable and there's harsher penalties and quicker turnaround for the prosecution of individuals that act against our social workers.
You mentioned all of these, extra resources that are going to be invested to make sure that this issue is mitigated. How much of this has put, an extra strain on the coffers of the department? I think already I read somewhere that there's around 20 million extra that was spent on overtime. Has it become an extra financial burden to try and put these extra resources to try and mitigate this issue?
Yeah, I mean, we have already been cut to the bone in the department. I mean, we're getting a ever shrinking. If you look at the inflation rate, we're getting an ever shrinking share of the national fiscus. We're actually saying that the Western Cape should get a higher share. We're now the third most populous province in the country, but we're only getting the fifth highest share of the national fiscus. And in the department, that's also being felt. Now, 20 million rand has been put aside for overtime for social workers, that now, because of this buddy system where you can't go into the hotspot areas on your own, you have a lot more hours that you work to get through your workload. And that's 20 million rand that's now been put aside for overtime. However, I do not think that that is something that I will be ashamed to defend. We cannot quantify the life of a social worker. They are doing a tremendous job servicing the most vulnerable clients in our province. And until we get that situation turned around, getting the criminality down, we need to make sure that we secure our social workers and make sure that those that truly have a heart for the community and going the extra mile above and beyond of what their job descriptions often say, to look after them. So yes, short answer, there is a cost. But in this case, it's a cost that I will also help defend, because if it's not for the social workers, we'll have many more people falling through the cracks and not being caught in the safety nets that we provide.
Mm-hmm. And just lastly, before I let you go, how integrated are, the community structures of these hotspots that you've mentioned, whether it's policing forums or, community leaders, religious bodies? Are you trying to also, make them wary of this issue and integrate them into trying to combat it?
Yeah, I mean, our social workers, they are truly, truly special human beings, and they go above and beyond to build networks, build up those relationships in the communities. We just came from Heinz Park, where we launched the GBV Ambassadors Program. And that's the fourth one we've launched in the province, where community members volunteer in their own time, without any cost to the department, their services to try and bring government and communities closer together. In some areas, our relationship with the CPFs and the SAPS is much better than in other areas. But I'm also encouraged now that with the new memorandum of understanding, we might close that gap a bit. And then, as I said right at the beginning, we need communities to also be vigilant. If you see somebody act with criminal intent towards our social workers, towards our professionals, report it. If it's safe to do so, please report it, so that we can find these criminal elements, we can prosecute them, and we can make it safer for our social workers, but then also ensure that we have a better service that we deliver to our communities that's in need.
All right, so we're going to leave it there. MEC for
you.
Social Development in the Western Cape, Mr. Jaco Londt. Really appreciate you giving us your time and letting us in on this very, very concerning phenomenon. I think, scripting the whole country now. And it's quite concerning that in the Western Cape, you have social workers that are being targeted.
Thank you so much.
Well, there you have it. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, News and Views continues on Salam Media.